Okay, so for the free plugin that came with the CoreOS 3.0 release, I ended up just getting the Gojira plugin. And as I get to know the components that come with the plugin, these aren't typically my kind of amps. They're a little higher gain than I would typically use. And I thought it might be useful to compare them against the amp models that already exist on the Quad Cortex for the similar amps. So the drive amps in the plugin are modeled after 5150 amps, 5153s, I think. We have those on the Quad Cortex. They may not be the exact same model, but they're pretty close. And the overdrive pedals that come with the plugin, one is very closely modeled after a Rat, and the other one is kind of its own thing, but it's kind of close to a few overdrives on the Quad Cortex. And so I thought it would be useful to compare those as well, just to see whether the plugin is giving you anything extra in terms of quality of these components. And kind of as a third piece, I have some captures that I purchased from Amalgam of the 5153 amp, and I thought it would be useful to maybe compare a few of those as well, just to hear the kind of the quality difference between the models that come with the plugin and the captures from Amalgam. So what I've set up here is a preset where I've tried to pull in as much as I could so we can compare them. So up front, we've got a bunch of overdrives. So we've got the plug-in, the dirt pedal, which is kind of the Rat. So we're comparing that against the rodent drive. And then we've got the OD pedal, which is its own thing, but I want to compare it against the 808 and the red drive. For amps, we've got the clean. We'll check that out. We'll also use that as kind of a basis for some of the overdrive comparisons. And then we've got the RST, which is kind of the mid-gain one. We'll compare that against the EV blue. And then we've got the HOT, which we'll compare against the EV red. And then we'll go through a few captures to check those out. For cabs, I've got the 3 different cabs that come with the plugin, 1, 2, and 3. And then on the back end, I do have a low-high cut because I want to have a high-pass cut just for when we're using the capture. So for now, that's going to stay on. So one of the things I want to point out is if you look at the CPU utilization, the amps for the plugin are some of the heaviest amps that I have seen on the Quad Cortex. I mean, they make up 50% of the block. You don't see that very often. I would also point out that the cabs are very heavy in terms of CPU utilization. If we compare this against, say, if we change this to a regular cab, so we'll go to the 4x12 EV, look at how much less CPU the stock cab uses. So I don't know why these cabs for the plug-in are so heavy for the CPU utilization. Maybe they're using higher quality IRs. I don't know. I haven't heard that much of a difference, but again, I'm still getting to know it. But just something to keep in mind, these cabs are very heavy in terms of CPU usage, and that does limit you in terms of how much you can throw into these presets. But let's start off with the clean amp. I'm going to turn that on. We'll use cab 1 that goes with that. And we'll just hear how the clean amp sounds. So a pretty straight head clean. The one thing I'll say about the clean amp, even at a very low gain, there's some breakup going on. And it's not a very pleasing breakup. I mean, even if I pull this back down to like 1, push the volume a little bit. It's less, but it's still there. So I'm not quite sure why that is. We'll put this back up to 2, and this was, I think, around 6. So that's not great. And I look at the meter, we're not clipping the output at all. I mean, if we go to the multi-out, we're not coming close to clipping. So that's not what it is. So I'm not sure why that amp is doing that. And I need to compare it against the actual plugin to see if the plugin does that as well. But so that's something to keep in mind as well. I'm not super happy with the clean amp that came with the plugin. So leaving that on, let's go ahead and check out some of the drive pedals. So let's check this one out. So the dirt is kind of the Rat kind of pedal. So if we turn that on, and I've got it set up right now for kind of a almost a kind of Nuno Rat trick where you're just using a tighten up the bottom end. So typically we'd use this into a driven amp And we can check that out as well, but I wanted to do it in the clean amp so we can really hear the comparison of the overdrive pedals. So if I compare that against the rodent drive, they're pretty similar. I think maybe the plug-in one has maybe a little more mid there. The rodent drive maybe has a little more scoop and sounds a little thinner. But they're pretty similar. So I don't know that there's really that much difference if we switch to play into a driven amp. So let me turn that off. And we'll switch to the second cab and we'll use the RST. So here's the amp on its own. We turn on the dirt drive. We go to the rodent drive. They play a similar function, and I think the rodent drive works just as well. So let's go ahead and go back to the clean amp and cab, and let's check out the OD. So this is the one that comes with the plugin. And I like this OD. It's nice sounding. It is its own thing. If we compare it against the 808, it obviously has much more gain and more level. The tonality is different. It's just like the one that comes with the plugin almost seems like it's a tube screamer with a little more gain to it. If we go compare it against the red drive, here we're kind of closer. The plug-in OD has a little more warmth to it. So I definitely like this overdrive, and I think I prefer it to some of the models on the Quad Cortex. So let's go ahead and switch to the amps and compare those. So we're going to go to the blue pieces, and we're going to use the second cab and turn on the RST amp. So I've got this set for kind of a, Van Halen scoop kind of thing. So it sounds really nice if we compare it against the blue model with basically the same setting. I feel like the plug-in model doesn't have quite as much girth to it. The other thing you'll notice is the output level, I gotta push it quite a bit to keep the volume about the same. I find that these plug-in models that come with the Gojira plugin are kind of quiet in terms of just volume levels. So I think of the two, I prefer the stock model for the Quad Cortex. Now, if we compare that against, maybe if we switch this out to the one with EL34s, it's pretty much the same. So yeah, the amps are pretty similar. I actually think that the stock EV amp sounds better. So we switch over to the heavy stuff and go to the hot amp. again, we've got a pretty scooped sound here, but we're basically the same setting. We compare that against the stock red. So again, I feel like they're pretty similar. But I feel like the stock model has a little more life to it. It's a little more present. Now, obviously, you could adjust the settings here and probably get it closer. I just wanted to compare them with the same settings. And I feel like the EV Red that comes with the Quad Cortex just has a little more push to it. So let's go ahead and turn that off. And let's compare them to some captures. So as I said before, this is from Amalgam. So this is an EVH 5150. It's on the 2 channel, so I think that's the blue. I've got it set to thin, so it's kind of scooped, and it's got a cab built in, and we're just going to turn on the high pass filter. So maybe we could use one that has a little more fullness to it. Let's go ahead and do the balanced. Where's the balanced? Or even the warm. So I think it sounds pretty good. I think the gain levels are a little higher on this. If we go to the crunch, yeah, there's not a really good capture that's in the same ballpark. So maybe if we go back to this one, and let's go do the warm. What we're going to do is we're just going to pull the gain back just a little bit. And then if we switch to the 3, which should be the red, and we'll just go to a balanced. So let's go ahead and compare that to the plugin HOT. So I think of the 3, the captures, I mean, you could tweak the captures a little bit. And obviously there's a lot of choices to go with, but I'm not super digging the captures as much. So I do think that the models, both on the plugin and on the Quad Cortex, do sound better. Overall, I think of the 3, I'm leaning towards the models that just come stock in the Quad Cortex. I think they sound the best. The ones that come with the plugin, I think they sound good, but I think they're a little bit inferior to what's already there. Some of that might just be personal taste, but it just seems to me that those models have a little more life to them, a little more presence to them, and I think they sound better. So anyway, I hope you found this helpful, especially if you're considering picking up this plugin as something for the Quad Cortex. And let me know what you think in the comments below in terms of which ones you like best, and if you have the Gojira plugin for the Quad Cortex, how you're using it and what kind of results you're getting. I'm definitely still digging the Plini plugin a little bit more than this, but admittedly, I've got to dig in more to this plugin and kind of learn the ins and outs of it. So as always, thanks for watching.